I'm Michael,
I'm Chris.
and we're Breaking Impossible.
What I want to talk about today is habits, right? So it's Chinese New Year. We should note that. Happy New Year, everybody. You're the tiger. 新年快乐,恭喜发财. So we were up late last night congratulating everybody and saying hi to everybody and chatting with everybody and everything. And so this morning, I was this close, just being like, you know what? Michael can just wait. And instead I was like, no, I made this commitment. I got to get up. It's got to be the thing. And what really did it was, so I had a trigger, I had the alarm, I had the routine, which is to get up to Michael. And then here we are, we're going to do, this is part of the reward, is talking with my friend and having some coffee and doing all of that. So that's what a habit is all about. And so, this is what I've been doing actually for several months as we do all this transition. I'm really happy I read the books by Charles Duhigg, who really popularized all of this. We talked a few weeks ago about Huberman and the actual brain science of all of this. But for an easy read, you can check out Charles Duhigg in his book, The Power of Habits. And it really talks about those three things: a trigger, a routine, and a reward, and points out how very often we all focus on the routine, like the actual doing of the thing. Like right now, I'm doing this routine. But what's more important is actually the trigger. It's actually the trigger that tricks your mind into doing the routine. And then your brain gives itself a reward, which you can enhance with some external reward. It's a bunch of fancy words. What does it really mean? It means if you want to go running in the morning, put your clothes out.
Right.
Put them right next to your bed. If you want to eat more healthily, replace wherever you put your chocolate and cookies with something a little better. Maybe some fruit, maybe some nuts. I don't know, something else you would like, because it's actually the act of going to that place. That's the trigger. And because we typically focus on the routine of eating the chocolate or eating the cookie and think, oh, I got to eat less of these, we neglect the trigger. So that's the thing. What's really interesting about it as you get into it is the brain science. So put simply, and again, we are not medical doctors. I am not a neuroscientist. But the brain science is really interesting. I encourage everyone to take a look. Again, you can start with Charles Duhigg's books. But your brain is wired actually to save energy. That is to say, it tries to make decisions easy for itself. So it makes the same decisions more readily and rapidly than new decisions, which it feels like it needs to think about. And it's built in to feel difficult. Like it actually is kind of hard to think about new things and try new things and get out of a different routine.
Right.
But you can short circuit that by, as I just suggested, changing your triggers. And that turns out to be surprisingly easy.
Right.
Last but not least, my own personal thing, because I am an economist, this is the one time I really lean into the sunk cost fallacy. So the sunk cost fallacy is that mistake everybody makes where, like, if you've been investing in something, whether it's running or stocks or something else, and it starts to go down, you think, oh, but I've already put so much into this, I really should ride it out. When very often you should just give up and start as if this were a new time and forget that and make a better decision.
Yeah, it's interesting. We were talking about Duhigg's book, and I've mentioned Huberman in both of our previous two videos. He talks a lot about neuroplasticity, and in his second, I think, and third podcast, it's entirely about sleep, the importance of sleep, because of his area of expertise where he looks at sight and how it affects neurotransmitters and the way your brain works in relation to sleep. He says that you should go outside. This is one of the things that we like to say, right? Get up, start moving, but also to go outside. Well, according to Huberman, if you go outside in the morning when the sun is at the early part of the horizon, there's a certain wavelength of light that will not go through your eyes if you're behind the window of a car or the window of a building. You've got to be outside to get these wavelengths into your eyes. But that has a trigger that has to do with your body's cycle for sleep. And similarly, if you go outside at nighttime around the time of sunset, again, there's these wavelengths of light that go through your eyes and then literally affects every cell in your body, and this rhythm that affects sleep. But it's like you were talking about habits, and we were talking about rituals around drinking. We were talking about alcohol the other day. This is your body's signal, this trigger, if you will, like you were saying, to set yourself up for being able to fall asleep at a certain time and get a good quality night's sleep.
You and I both are early risers. Like we're usually up before dawn. Yeah, the rituals, it's interesting. Also, you talk about the rituals of drinking, because, you know, there are so many different dimensions to full wellness, right? And so sleep is one of them, physical aspects and all of that, and social. So you are making some kind of commitment to not drinking like forever, right? Is that what you're actually doubling down on these days?
The more I look into it, the more I've decided that there's no safe level of alcohol, and I'm not just going to stop drinking until I complete the challenge. I'm going to stop drinking altogether.
That's quite a big switch. We've mentioned before that neither of us are really teetotalers, nor do we go heavily at it, but it has been, you know, a normal thing as part of life. So that's a big switch.
Yeah, it's a big change. Initially, I thought I would not drink until I finished the challenge, as a way of giving me a little bit of an edge to better prepare for the challenge. As a result of having seen that sign, and as a result of having done the research in kind of a similar way that I've been doing research on sleep and how it affects fitness, there's more and more information out there. It's relatively recent science. It's pretty strong evidence that it's not a good idea, and that it increases your risk of cancer significantly enough, and it's a cumulative effect. So the longer you've been drinking, the greater you've increased your risk. And unfortunately, there's science that says stopping altogether, it takes time before that risk goes down after you've stopped. So
do you recall the scientist who did that work?
I will put it in the notes.
Okay.
There's a consensus for it, and it's published, the CDC and the World Health Organization and other places like that.
Yeah,
I'll put it up there.
Yeah.
I don't want to forget to tell you too, tomorrow is the actual day of the challenge as we do this recording. And I don't know if we mentioned it before, but Andre's made some changes to the challenge for this year.
As he does every year. Each year he makes it just a little bit harder.
Yeah. Well, in this case, one of the trails was a little bit shorter than advertised, so he's added some length. So now the 4 trails is a little over 300 kilometers. He's put in a restriction for using anti-inflammatory medicines, ibuprofen, because it turns out that endurance athletes that take that risk death. So it's just one more of those things that can kill us when we're out there. Who knew?
Well, that's,
I didn't know.
You know, we could go off on that one for maybe we'll next time, because you and I have talked about that quite a bit over time.
Yeah.
And it's funny, some of the things that he adds to make it more difficult, I shrug and I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. I already don't do that. Like polls. I already hate polls. Like, don't give me polls. Like but the no music, that one's hard.
Yeah.
And now this anti-inflammatory thing, thanks to our many conversations, is back to the, okay, whatever. I already don't do that. So cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, you will have to dig up the scientist. Either you or your son was talking about that inflammation is actually part of recovery. And so if you're taking anti-inflammatories, you wind up inhibiting your recovery.
Yeah, so that was me, and I wrote about it on one of my blog posts.
All the better. So
yeah, no,
it's in the links.
It's in the links. I'll put which one that is too. Yeah, no, I had an injury that I healed on my own, and one of the things I did was ice and elevation, but only on the first day, because I wanted to have the inflammation, because that's how your body is doing its healing. And yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah. My memory works sometimes.
So anyway, on the 4 trails, I think it's all local runners this year. I think it's 16 runners.
Oh wait, is Tomo's not going to make it?
No, no, he's not. I think it's all local runners. I think if I had qualified, I would have been the only international runner. I think this year, because of the travel restrictions, it turns out it's only going to be local runners. 16 of them, I think, is the right number. And it's also 50-50 male-female for the first time. Which is
that's amazing.
Yeah, which is great. And several people are going to be, it's not going to be their first effort. I know Tony Tong, this will be his 3rd effort. I ran into him on the trail when I was out on the Mac, right about the noodle shop, when he asked me if I was going to keep going or not. This will be his third attempt at the 4 trails. And I know Virginia is going to be participating. There's going to be a couple that are doing it. It's not their first time that they've participated. And yeah, I'm going to be hanging out with Andre as much as I can while we're doing the dot watching and keeping track of people as they go.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah,
cool.
I got the hotel room where I'm at, and I'll show the video about one of the reasons I picked it was because it's so close to the light rail and the MTR and all the rest of it, was so that I could be at the start of the challenge, which is ironically the wrong place to be staying now that I'm not participating, because we're not allowed to be at the beginning of the race this year because of social distancing.
Yeah.
So that would have only benefited me if I'd been participating. Because I'm not, I'm now where I don't need to be, because I can't be there that time. And later, where I will be going to see the runners, that's where I should have stayed. So I changed my booking. I just got a confirmation that they're allowing me to make the change. I'm going to be staying on Lantau for the end of it.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, but if I've known I wasn't participating this year, I would have stayed on Lantau to begin with.
Well, I salute you, sir. You planned for success. That's the right thing to do.
Well,
yeah, you can roll. If it fails, you can roll with that, but like plan for success.
I guess that's one way to look at it.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah.
No, I think it's worth noting, and you wrote a great blog post about this too, that like you totally committed. And the fact that no other foreign competitors made it, like, just highlights what a big commitment you made. There's 5 weeks of quarantine before you could even get over there.
Yeah, I don't know if I actually mentioned this in either of our first 2 videos, but I quit my job.
Yeah.
I went to Canada for 3 weeks, and I've been here for 3 months in order to do this. And I'm still glad that I came, because I've got a lot of valuable experience. Since I'm not participating and I didn't have to train as much after I hurt my back, I've been trying to scout the trails and go on the parts of the trails I hadn't been before, and I've learned quite a bit. I was talking to Andre about it the other day. Only after you've done every section of the Maclehose Trail do you have a real appreciation for what you're up against. And that's just the first 100 kilometers. But then when you go and you do the first sections of Wilson, there's this long section of Wilson before you get up to the 8 Immortals. And I was there in the dark, and I'm thinking to myself, if I had just done the first 100 kilometers already, and then I got to this long section in the dark before I even get up to the 8 Immortals, this is only the beginning of the second of 4. The weight of it, it becomes much clearer when you're actually out there at night and you've already been on all those other sections of the first trail. My one regret is that I won't have the opportunity to scout all the rest of the parts of the Hong Kong Trail and all the rest of the parts of the Lantau Trail that I haven't been on yet. Although I will be spending at least the day on Lantau for the end of the challenge, so I can be there at the post box when people are finishing and surviving.
Yeah, so yes to all of that, and I know what you mean. I really do. Like, you and I have experienced that together when we do a bunch of our overnight stuff, where I had actually gone out and scouted a bunch of the trails, and you were feeling the weight more than I. And a couple of times where we hadn't done that, we'd actually given up because, and only like a mile from familiar territory, which would have just turned it around for us, that kind of thing. But what's interesting to me about it is we've also begun sort of trying to formulate our method, I think is the word you've settled on. And for me, it loops back to the habits, because what's interesting is as we recognize those things, those are also just their own triggers, and you can begin to select mindfully which triggers you're going to actually give weight to and go with, and which ones you're just not going to. And when you do accidentally stumble through a trigger and you feel that weight, that's the routine, you can ignore that too. And you can be like, oh, well, I just need to wait for the next trigger. And you can set it for yourself. Oh, it's that signpost over there. It's that, next thing. And so we have these sort of mini and meta cycles of training. And the fact that you say some of these folks have, attempted the challenge a few times already. That's also, I think we talked about this just last time, our mindset, which is, we've attempted qualification. Sooner or later, we will be fully qualified. We will actually run the race. We probably won't get it on our first try, but we'll keep cycling through until we actually get there. And
Yeah, and talking about those triggers, as I said, I picked this hotel because it's close to the beginning of the challenge, and I wanted to have the habit of being able to go to sleep at night in the same room, so that I would be able to get that quality sleep before I did my qualifying run and before I did the actual challenge. And after I'd been here for a few weeks, I started to have trouble sleeping, and I didn't realize why until recently. But I've had this Dream headband, which is a professional grade sleep monitoring device. I don't think you can even get it any longer commercially. 200
I gotta
nights.
ask you, there's a little prong on the back. Does that plug into your brain?
No, but it does monitor. It does monitor your brain. It's an actual EEG, and it monitors brain waves, brain wavelengths, and respiration and heart rate. And according to the app, I've used it 200 nights now since I had it, and I compare it with my fitness watch. But anyway, I didn't realize I was having trouble sleeping because I had stopped using it. And I'm so used to that trigger, putting that thing on my head, or at least I had been before I got here, that it became one of the triggers. And by not using it,
that's interesting. Yeah.
I no longer had that trigger. So it was one of the reasons why it was difficult for me to go to sleep, because I had established that habit and made it that association between the device and going to sleep. Like we were talking about having a routine before you go to bed, like taking a shower, because it lowers your body temperature. It's a trigger.
It just feels good, but you know.
But anyway, yeah, it's just another one of those triggers. And the same thing with just actually wearing that device. And the same thing happens with going out there on the trail and scouting different sections of it. It's every time you go out there with the intention of scouting that section that you hadn't been on, just being out there is the trigger for doing more, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm sure you saw that article, speaking of devices and all of this sort of thing, someone talking about the dangers of the devices, that you can wind up going down your own little numeric rabbit hole when you're trying to improve all the various things the watch can tell you, because in many ways it's too much data. And
yes.
And what I took away from that is again, something we happily do ourselves due to our reading and so forth, which is we actually focus on the perceived exertion and then sort of verify where and what we can with devices. So it is funny that you wound up down your own rabbit hole of your own device and not sleeping well while you're trying to sleep well. Like, you're overdoing it, pal.
Well, I think that's one of the things that we want to provide to people who are watching us is the opportunity to benefit from our experience and looking into all the things that we've been looking into. And on that note, reading and interpreting information from the watch, my watch kept saying I needed more time to recover. And you were telling me that you were finding that to be an inaccurate information, or related to inaccurate information.
Just, Garmin, if you're watching.
Yeah. So anyway, every time I talk to somebody, the trail runners out here that are people who have actually finished the 4 trails and survived the 4 trails, they'd say, yes, don't pay any attention to your watch. And it didn't occur to me until very recently that I thought that their watches were telling them that they needed more time to recover, and they were just ignoring their watches. That's not what it was. They're just in better shape than I am, and they need less recovery. So my watch should have been telling me that I needed less time for recovery, and it would be if I were in better shape. So sometimes you have that, you think the information is inaccurate, but before you discard it, you might just be not realizing what it's telling you.
Yeah, no, I agree totally on that. And there's just so many issues and dimensions with all of that. Like specifically for me, you were hinting at it, but my app constantly tells me whatever the workout is unproductive, and I need a low aerobic. I have a low aerobic shortage, and like no matter what I do with the stupid thing, it always tells me that, and I'm just like, you know what? Forget it. It's not. I've done so many things, as you know, the internet's. If I took all the hours I'd spent trying to figure the stupid thing out and just put them into training, then I would be way better off. So Garmin, if you're listening, stop it.
I feel that way about heart rate variability. There's a whole bunch of information out there about it that I just don't understand the science to it. I have a basic understanding, but I wish I understood it better.
Yeah, I think that taking a step back, we were talking about, we hope we share information with people and so forth, but as much, I hope people join us. I mean, kind of the fun thing of where we are now is that we're actually just starting to get ahead of the curve. And we've been at this for a long time, like since 2013-ish, we've touched on before. And, it does work, like it helps and you get more going and you can do more. And so I hope we see everybody out there. It's not just sharing, it's an invitation. Come join us. You can do it.
Yeah. Another thing that I've come to realize only after having been here is that 100 kilometers before doing the 4 trails isn't enough. You really need to have done 100 miles. You need to do a 100-mile distance, because that's roughly half the event. That's just a general guideline for training. Before you try to do something, you should have done half of that.
Well, and we mentioned before, like how crazy hard the challenge is, which is why we picked it. But doing a century is no small feat in and of itself, by itself, right? And this is almost 2, almost.
Yes, and I have a plan to do 100 miles in 24 hours. That's my goal. Well, I have to do 100 miles. Andres told me I have to do 100 miles, but my desire is to do 100 miles in 24 hours. And if you'll remember, when we did our first 24-hour loop around Lake Washington, we did 52 miles. So I have to nearly double that in the same span of time. Yeah,
the Lake Washington loop these days, with the little elevation it has compared to what we had been doing out towards Snoqualmie Pass, I think is doable. 2 loops around White Lake Washington in 24 hours should be doable for us. The other thing that I realized after having been here is that I should have been focusing more on speed work from the beginning. When I got here, I was focused on elevation and distance, which are important, but in retrospect, there are these relatively flat sections at the beginning of the MAC if you're doing it in the reverse direction. They're called catchwaters. The first few miles with the gradual increase, I could have been doing speed repeats there when I first got here, and I probably would have been in a lot better shape in terms of being prepared for the challenge. I already had the endurance, and I'd already done the elevation work in Canada. I should have been doing speed work, but I couldn't know that at the time. It's only after having had the experience of being here. I'm gonna roll my eyes at you.
Yeah.
Read Coop's book. I'm telling you.
Read I understand. Coop's book. So you have to do the speed work in order to improve your VO2 max. And my VO2 max didn't improve at all, but that's because I was focused on the wrong thing when I got here. I'm in Hong Kong. I have the
I understand. Yeah,
I had the opportunity to do the entire trail. I had the opportunity to be up there and getting the elevation. I was doing that, but I wasn't working on the thing that one of the important things that I needed to also be working on.
He talks about the VO2 max, and that is a key underpinning. It's a metric you can measure, but more importantly, he's saying what you're saying is, you need speed work to improve your overall time, which is exactly what Andre is telling you too, right? And telling us, and couldn't agree more. And so the reason I recommend Koos' book is that program, and you'll pardon my language, but watches be damned, will just improve overall all the things that you're talking about. And it's just such an easy routine to follow. It's right in line with what we're already doing, except you do what it forces you to do what you're suggesting. It's that speed work. So yeah, I can't wait till the ice melts. I cannot do the speed work right now. I think so. I went and did 20 kilometers on Saturday. And it was gorgeous in all of its bleak beauty, like just studies of gray. I mean, like gray trails with white snow and gray trees, and then gray ice over lakes, and then gray skies. And it's just beautiful. I don't want it to sound dreary, but it is a study in gray. But you just cannot do speed work on that stuff. I mean, I was just, slipping up one side and sliding down the other So I'm looking forward to spring. Cannot get over the beauty.
I wonder how you're going to get those wavelengths of light in order to establish the best possible sleep patterns.
Well, no, I think what I was trying to hint at earlier is that here, that's going to mess me up. Dawn at those sort of ideal 8-ish hours-ish only comes for a short period. And then it's either way too short or way too long. Because I'll have to get up at like, it'll be the other way. It'll be, when is dawn going to come? Dawn will come at like 3 a.m. in the summer. And sunset will be at like 11 p.m. I'll have 4 whole hours of sleep if I do the wavelength thing. So you can't probably tell right now, but I have like a giant photography lamp that is just like lighting up this room like a sunlight. I'm hoping that has some wavelength effect, but it probably doesn't.
There's an app that can measure the number of lumens in the light, but there's no way.
So I'm sorry to interrupt again, but the lumens of light, like that's one thing, but I thought the things you were talking about is like a certain ultraviolet frequency or something, right?
It is. It's a certain wavelength and color. There are lamps that simulate sunlight, and that's, I think, probably what you're going to be needing to look into.
Yeah, well, we didn't get that this year, so now I'm more interested in figuring out blackout shades because soon it's going to be light way more than it is dark, which is
yeah. Well,
so
darkness is another one of those triggers.
Yes, exactly right. So we've already picked up a few. We're trying them out. So what have you been out then doing?
Just sections of Wilson. Did you go to the castle?
No, not yet. No, I haven't figured that one out. I mean, I got to work up to that. That's a lengthy one. But yeah, the Vauxhall, I don't know how to say it properly, but Vauxhall Castle is going to be cool. No, this recce I did was down towards the south. So it's about 10 clicks in the city, which has its own charms and beauty. And then there's just a big wilderness preserve that essentially leads to the sea. I don't know if where I ended up was actually on salt water or not, but it's so close as to almost make no difference. It was super cool too. I swear to God, 90% of the beings that use that train station where I actually end must be elves. Because like literally it's like there's just dirt trails that go to the platform. There's like no anything, like the trail to the platform, and then that's it. But what's even cooler is then like that's not quite the end of the line. It goes down a little bit further, and it's like a Ghibli anime scene. The train station is like this cute little cottage. And so, yeah, I think it's mostly used by elves and gnomes. All due respect to the actual people who live out there. But it was so stunning to me to wander out of the wilderness to this train station and be like, this is the train station. Okay. And wait, tell me one more time when you're leaving. It's next Monday?
No, it's Sunday technically, but it's 1:00 in the morning on Sunday. So
okay,
Saturday,
night, Hong Kong time.
Yeah. So Friday is the last day of the challenge. I'll be staying in Mui Wo. And then Saturday morning, I just have to go from Mui Wo to the airport, which is in Changchun. It's getting all my luggage from here to Mui Wo on Friday morning that's going to be the challenge.
Put it on your back. Do like I do.
I'm probably going to have a duffel bag on one shoulder, my laptop bag on another shoulder, plus two suitcases. And if I go directly to the airport from here, maybe I can check my bags the day before. Then I don't have to drag that luggage with me to Mui Wo, because Mui Wo is not easy to get to from Changchun.
No, that's
on the other
point.
It's on the other side of Lantau Island. But if I go to the airport and drop my luggage, then I just have to get myself to Mui Wo and back to the airport. And then I can take the airport shuttle from here yeah, that's a great idea. Glad we talked about it.
Yeah.
Probably save me
I know a
hassle.
couple of things.
Yes, you do.